In this video, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of my NULLSPACE sample pack. So let's start with an overview of the pack. As you can see, we have 9 different categories here. The majority of these categories have 15 sounds in them. There's only 2 that have 10 sounds in them. This would be the atmospheres and the signatures. And so in total, we have 125 sound effects in the pack. When I was planning and creating this pack, I was thinking about the target audience that I have for this sample pack. And the main target audience for this pack are music composers and video editors / sound designers. And there's a lot of overlap between what these target groups need, but there are also some differences. Music composers are mainly looking for sounds that fit very well within a musical context, within a musical composition, so they kind of can easily be blended with a lot of other musical elements. So when there's already a lot of stuff going on, there's a lot of tonal stuff going on, they need sounds that fit within this context. So they can't really make use of a lot of sounds that have very prominent tonal elements or sounds that have a texture that stands out too much or are too heavily designed, I would say, and too heavily stylized. And now the same is true for video editors and sound designers as well, but they will also be looking for sounds that are a bit more designed and stylized sometimes, and sounds that kind of stand out a bit more and can stand on their own without any other elements playing. And so one of the main ideas of this pack is that I wanted to keep the balance between those two and focus on elements that will be usable for both of these audiences. So now let's start with the atmospheres up here. So in this section, we have 10 sounds. Overall, I would say they mainly fall into the category of dark, dystopian, eerie sounds. And we have a mixture of lower pitched and higher pitched elements. And one of the main ideas for this was that I wanted to make them really large and spacious sounding. For me, these sounds immediately evoke a certain emotion, and that's why I really like them. And while experimenting with them, I also found that they can very easily be layered. For example, you can have a look at the pitch of those and then just pitch them accordingly if you want to layer them. So for example, I could just grab these 2 and pitch them a bit. And so by doing this, you can very easily create new atmospheres, new elements yourself. Now let's head over to the booms. So there we get 15 elements. I was looking to make mainly sounds that are not too heavily stylized. Instead, I wanted to focus on sounds that can be used in a lot of different situations, but still give you a variety of choices regarding the overall feel, the tail, and the style of the sound. But I also have some a bit more stylized sounds in there, like this one. Or this one, which has a ping on top of it. So with the Braams, we have really aggressive, heavily distorted sounds, like this one. But we also have sounds that are more on the softer side. So with the downers, we have a few clean subdowners that have a very high usability and will fit in a lot of different situations. But we also have a bit more stylized, distorted sounds, like for example this more classic neuro style downer. And also sounds that have a more audible tremolo movement in them. But for these elements, I wanted to make sure that they always have a clean layer below them that doesn't have this movement. So you could always go in there, cut the highs, and just use the clean part that doesn't have the kind of tremolo movement that's on top of it. So in the hits folder, we have hits that don't have a whoosh in front of them because we have a separate category for those. And so in those, you will find a few different types of hit. You will have the, I would say, more classic hit with the noisy tail. You will have metallic hits and also hits that are a bit more low end focused. Then within the riser section, obviously there is a mix of shorter and longer risers. But there are two things that I mainly kept in mind when designing those. First, I wanted to avoid heavy tremolo and stutter effects because I know that this is one of the main things that a lot of people are complaining about with their risers. And this is mainly due to the fact that it's very unlikely that whatever stutter movement you have in your sound is gonna coincidentally fit with the tempo of your track or the project you're working on. And so a lot of risers with heavy stutter movement in them are gonna be very difficult to use in a lot of situations. And I would say that the majority of music composers and video editors are able to easily add their own stutter or tremolo effect to their riser. Because you can just go in and cut the sound up yourself, for example, like this. And you have your own stutter effect. But if the stutter effect is already baked into the sample, then you can't really get rid of it. And then the usability of the sound is very limited. The other thing is that I wanted to make sure that a lot of those sounds actually cover a huge portion of the frequency spectrum. And this is kind of the same idea because obviously in a full mix with a lot of elements playing at the same time, for example, you might want to have not too much low end in your riser or in your sound effects overall. But for music composers, it's very easily to cut the low end away or the high end or whatever they want to cut. But if the information is not there to begin with, then it's really difficult to kind of add it or bring it back if you actually do need it. And there are definitely also situations where you want to have your riser to be a bit more full sounding. And that's why it's a better idea to give people the most flexibility with the sounds and not give them sounds that are already too heavily limited regarding the frequency spectrum. So with the signatures, one of the main attributes of those is obviously that they are kind of easily recognizable and able to stand on their own. And because one of the main attributes of these sounds is that they can kind of easily be recognized, I would also suggest to layer them with each other, cut them up, use only certain portions of the sounds to kind of create your own with them. And you can also watch the walkthrough of the trailer track I made for the sample pack, where I'm also using signature sounds, cut them up and layered them with each other. Then with the whoosh hits, again, the same idea with the hits. We're going to have the hits with the noisier tails, we are going to have metallic hits. We're going to have hits that are a bit more focused on the low end and just a few more stylized elements as well. And then with the whooshes, we obviously have our, I would say, classic noise whooshes that just have a really high usability because they fit in a lot of situations. They're just great, very simple transitional elements. They work great in a musical context. They also work great for a lot of video edits. But we also have the more interesting stylized elements in there. All of these sounds also come with metadata. So in the pack, you also get more detailed description of the sounds, and all this information is embedded into the individual samples. If you're using a software that supports it, you can also search for these more descriptive terms to find the appropriate sounds for your projects easier. I hope this gave you a good overview of the pack. Let me know if you have any questions, and take care.